play well.
Plays well with others, yes.
And I think that it's interesting that well word, because you can say that you're playing with other people or you're playing well. And
yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's an expression back home. A lot of times when you get your report card from school, it'll say, "Little Johnny plays well with others." So it's kind of that's where it comes from. It's kind of just a funny thing.
Okay. And how did that idea came to your mind to invite other guests on your record?
Well, actually, I'll give you the short version. I was going to, Roscoe Beck and I and Tom Breckline were talking about doing a trio record where we were going to have special guests be the vocalist as an extra vocalist on the record. That's how it first started. And then it mutated into Roscoe was working all the time with Leonard Cohen. Tommy Breckline was doing his thing with Kenny Loggins. And so I was going to do some variation of this thing where I was going to have special guests on it. And I originally reached out to Joe Bonamassa because we've been buddies for a while, and Robin Ford, who I've gotten to know over the last few years. And then Paul Barrera from Little Feat I've known for a long time. And basically, at that point I was thinking, well, what songs were we going to do? And I had a bunch of ideas. And usually I write lyrics myself. But I thought maybe it was a good time to do a collaboration. So I knew a really great songwriter who lived in my town. I just happened to run into him one day, actually about a year ago. And I said, "Hey, you want to start writing some tunes together?" And he said, "Sure, let's see what happens. How do you want to do this?" I said, "Well, I'm traveling a lot. I'll just make little demos on GarageBand on my laptop and send them to you." And I would send him these little demos, and then he would send them back like sometimes less than 24 hours later with songs done. So in that process, in the course of like 3 months, we wrote like 60-something songs, or 3, 4 months. So we had the tunes, and then it just kind of worked into, I called those guys in and said, "Hey, I got the tunes picked out." Initially I was going to have those guys sing, but when John, who was my songwriting partner, it just seemed appropriate to have him sing his own songs. So I still wanted those guys to play on the record. So that's how Robin still was on, and Joe, Paul Barrera, Roscoe, and then I really wanted John Cleary to play piano. And he was the only guy I didn't really know personally yet, but since then we've struck up a relationship, so that's pretty cool.
Okay. Are you going to play some of the record tracks?
Yeah, we'll play almost the whole record tonight, yeah.
And how are you gonna play the parts of the other guys? Have you studied them? Or
I just do my thing. It's kind of funny, I did learn all of Robin's parts, but I don't do them. But I might quote a little bit here and there, but we just kind of do our thing with them. But I kind of put all the parts together in a new part.
And did you change your gear in every different song, or it was like
on the record? Yes, I used a lot of different guitars on it. The 3 main amps that I used, and a lot of times when I tracked, I had all 3 amps on, and then when we mixed it, we just kind of pushed one up or down. I used a Tweed Bassman, 58 Bassman reissue. I used a old Fender Princeton. It was a silver face, so I think it was a 1970-ish. And then I used a Paul Reed Smith HXDA head, which is that Dwayne Allman, Hendrix. It's basically a Plexi Marshall that they tweaked. Because Dwayne Allman used Marshall 50-watt bass heads, and that's why his tone was so thick. So this amp has little toggle switches on it where you can make it either just like a super lead like Hendrix is, or you can make it more of the Dwayne Allman basement. So I kind of tweaked there's three different toggle switches so I had some down, some up. And then I would work the volume knob on my guitar to get the different sounds. And, I used a Vibrolux here and there. The guitars I used Telecasters. I used 59 Les Paul reissue. I used a 1959 Strat. I used, there's a friend of mine back home that makes guitars named Rick Landry Guitars. I used 3 or 4 of his different guitars. So it was quite a few different ones. I also used a little Gibson amp for some slide stuff. So it was quite a few different things.
Okay, and talking about guitars and amplifiers, have you got any new signature coming?
Well, I've been working with some friends back home and helping them design certain things. There's an amp that a friend of mine made in Milwaukee for me that we named the Harmonic Pummeler 3000. And it's a 410 amp because 410s is my favorite configuration. And that amp's unique in the fact that it's 410s, but it's actually more like a double deluxe. So it's 4 66 tubes, and I can run on half power or full power. It's got a nice reverb on it, and then I wanted the tremolo circuit from the Brown era of Fender amps, which is almost more, it sounds like a Univibe, because it's thing. That's a technical term. And so he put that all on the amp for me. And then I wanted Orange Sparkle Tolex. So it's Orange Sparkle Tolex, 410s, cream covered, grill cloth, and it's the Harmonic Pummeler 3000. And then I've been helping my buddy Rick Land, who, Lander Guitars. We've been working on this design of this guitar, which is a double cutaway. It's kind of like a double cutaway Telecaster, but not quite, but it's similar to that. And it's made out of swamp. It's made out of sugar pine, so it's really light. It's got a maple cap, but it's chambered. And it's got 3 P90s on it and a Bigsby. And it is Orange Sparkle to match the amp. So, and that we call that guitar the Chief. So, but these are boutique guys that live in my hometown that, make things one at a time. And but they make really, really good stuff. It's not cheap, but it's cool. But I also do all my Fender stuff, and I do all that stuff for Wildwood guitars, and so it's I like guitars. I like amps. There it is.
And I've seen that you're selling a pedal on your website.
That I do have. That is my Gristle King pedal. That's what I'm using tonight for overdrive. My buddy Tim Yarning, that I went to college with. He came up with a clean boost years ago called the Luxury Drive, and then he came up with an overdrive that I really liked, and that was kind of my signature overdrive, and we called that one the Diabolical Gristle Tone Manipulator, the DGTM. And then at one point I said, well, why don't we combine the clean boost with the overdrive? And we did. We called that the Gristle King. And then for about a year or so, T-Rex was making them in Denmark. And then we ended that relationship for one reason or another. And then Tim modified the circuit a little bit. So there was a Gristle King 1, there was a Gristle King Mark II. Now there's the Mark III, which just sounds better. And then there's a different version where he's got 3 toggle switches on the pedal. And I kept on hitting these toggle switches when I was playing. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So I just said, set them the way I like them and remove the toggle switches. So we did that. So now there's another version called the Gristle King Lean that we have. And then he has this new overdrive that he sent me that I really like. That it's basically the Gristle King overdrive and then a slightly less distorted, just kind of a crunch tone, which is really cool. He goes, well, what should we call this? And I said, we should call it the Viscosilator. So now we have the Viscosilator pedal. And then I really told him how I like this, the vibrato or the tremolo thing on my it's like a magnetone. Remember those old magnetone amps, which is what Lonnie Mack used and Neil Young likes to use and a bunch of people. And so he made me a kind of a dual stage tremolo. We call it the Tiki Tongue tremolo. So those are the new things that'll be on my site to sell that are kind of signature pedals.
Okay. And we were talking about in your music, your band, and instead talking about the teaching part of your career and the clinic part of your career, what's the main difference between two situations when you pick up a guitar and do one thing or another?
Well, it's not all that different. I mean, obviously when you're in a clinic situation, or when I've been doing stuff on behalf of Fender in the past or something like that, a lot of it is stunt guitar. You know what I mean? Where I got to play a little flashier. When I'm doing stuff for more of an artistic sense, there's less of that, although it's still there because people come and they want to hear it. So, like the latest record was a lot more song oriented. They're good songs, but with cool playing on it, and that's really where I come from when I'm playing out with my band. There's songs with cool playing. When I'm in a clinic, I kind of got to beat people over the head a little bit more. You know what I mean? Especially guitar players always have that, thing that you have to go. Do that.